Welcome to Beyond the Next Chapter. I am your host, Whitney Clark. She's a New York Times bestselling author who writes books for the hopeless romantic, which I am. And if you're listening to this, you probably are too, or you're going to become one. Joining us today is BK Borison. She's one of our favorite romance authors who's out with a new book called And Now Back to You. It's the second in the Heartstrings series inspired by Nora Ephron and 90s rom-com classics, which we love. BK, I think Sleepless in Seattle, You've Got Mail are like my all-time favorite movies.
Yes, I think for most of us who grew up in the 90s, they're classics for a reason. A little intimidating to tackle those as inspiration, but yes, I love my Nora Ephron for sure.
We love it. So first-time caller, modern day Sleepless in Seattle, and Now Back to
Mhm.
You is a little kind of like When Harry Met Sally.
Yeah, I like to say seasoned by instead of inspired by, because the goal is that when readers read the books, that they feel the same way they feel when they watch the movies. So light similarities in plot, but certainly their own stories. They sort of deviate from the entry point.
Tell us a little bit about And Now Back to You. When did you come up with this love story with Jackson and Delilah? When did you know that you wanted to put this in its own book?
So initially, And Now Back to You was pitched as the third and final book in the series. But when I wrote First Time Caller and Jackson had such a loud, prominent voice in that story, my editor read it and she was like, no, Jackson's book has to be number two. He can't be number three. So we had to do some shifting around. I was not ready to write his book at all. But yeah, Jackson and Delilah's story came pretty quickly after writing First Time Caller. I knew their story was going to be the light twist on When Harry Met Sally. And it was just really fun playing. Delilah is the sunshine, happy-go-lucky, outgoing, optimistic character. And Jackson is I wouldn't call him grumpy, but he's very methodical. He likes his routines. And so Delilah just barges in and disrupts all of that for Jackson.
Maybe like a little grumpy sunshine, at least from
Light,
the
I would say.
exterior. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly opposites attract. I know a lot of people say enemies to lovers, but I'm passionate that Jackson has very one-sided beef with Delilah. So he might think enemies to lovers, but Delilah is blissfully oblivious to any enemy behavior.
That's so true. He leaves the post-it notes on her car. They're
Mhm.
competing meteorologists. He works at a radio station. She works at a TV station. Did you have to study and learn more about meteorology, like more than you had known previously?
A ton. My family is big local weather, passionate about our local meteorologists, but I definitely had to look up quite a bit. And I'm so lucky there were a number of incredible women meteorologists who reached out to me on Instagram who were like, if the next book is about Jackson, I have a lot of thoughts. And so there's one specific woman who works at the National Weather Service, who gave me a lot of insight on which weather models they use for snow forecasting terminology. Her name is Meg, and she's phenomenal. So big thank you to Meg for telling me the difference between the European model and the other models.
That's so funny because I work in news, so I'm working with
Mhm.
meteorologists literally all the time. And sometimes I just listen to them talk about the forecast. I'm like, this is like a foreign language.
It's very soothing though in a weird way.
Yeah.
Like it's just like I like listening to what's going on, and there's a big storm barreling down on the East Coast right now. So a lot of weather reporting, and it's just like it's soothing. It's nice background noise.
Totally. And when you live in a place for a long time, like I know you were grew up in Baltimore, still live in Baltimore, you get used to seeing sort of the same people on television. That's something that's really comforting, and that's something that in the book Delilah talks about that her grandpa always would watch the news every morning, every afternoon, and that really inspired her.
Yeah, very much so. And I think for me growing up, my parents love local news and local radio. And so we had like these people that very much felt like part of our family just growing up. Like we would watch dinner and then watch Rob Roblin on the evening news. When I went away to college, I was like, I felt homesick for home a lot. So I would like watch the local Baltimore news, just for like the local commercials and like seeing what's going on in the different neighborhoods. I'm a sucker for local news stations.
I love that. And I love that. I mean, I work in local news, so I'm a little biased. But I do the same thing when I go out of town. I always watch the local news. Like, I'm just curious what they cover, the weather. It's just endlessly fascinating to me. So I was so excited to read a book about local meteorologists. And let's talk a little bit about Delilah. What is Delilah like?
Delilah is someone who, despite getting handed a whole host of negative circumstances, makes the best out of them. And I think Delilah's really, when we meet her, she's really struggling to be seen as someone who can be taken seriously. She's the fun newscaster. She's everyone's favorite, but she sort of feels like the butt of the joke sometimes. And so when we meet her, she's really trying to be taken more seriously, both by her colleagues, by Jackson, certainly, and by the people of Baltimore who adore her. So her journey throughout the book is trying to find the balance between being the quirky meteorologist, and being someone to be taken seriously.
And what I loved is that I didn't love this for her. She was a little self conscious, like she was kind of always, she was worried people weren't taking her seriously. But people at the end of the day still loved her.
Yeah, and I think that's her journey in the book is that she realizes that she doesn't, she can be just as whimsical as she wants to be, and there's still validity in that. You can still be taken seriously and be whimsical and funny, and joy filled. And I think, people sort of dismiss women who, as manic pixie dream girl, right? Just because you like pretty, frilly, fun things doesn't mean you can't also be taken seriously.
Totally. I love the word whimsy too. I'm trying to like bring
Whimsy.
more whimsy into my life in 2026. I feel like that's a thing a lot of people are talking about. So there's Delilah and Jackson. We talked a little bit about Jackson. Let's talk more about Jackson. What is he like? What is he like as her competitor?
Well, I think Jackson is the only one who sees them as competitors. He is a reluctant, I would say, radio broadcaster. He sort of gets on for his traffic and weather together and then disappears. He's very scripted, he's very regimented. He likes everything in its neat little boxes, which I think lends itself well to weather reporting because he can predict the weather, he can share it, and then he can go back to, his little desk. He's the sole guardian of his two younger sisters. He grew up in a very, what's in a very loose environment. There wasn't a lot of structure or guidelines. He had a lot of parental neglect. So now he's holding on to the things he can control with a white-knuckled grip. And I think when we meet him, he's sort of struggling against that a little bit. He wants to be able to be more flexible, but he just doesn't know how. And so being partnered with Delilah for a road trip up into the mountains to cover a snowstorm feels like the perfect opportunity for him to loosen up a little bit.
Exactly. What I loved about First Time Caller and what I loved about And Now Back to You is these are characters who are dealing with some very real life, big, I don't want to say problems, but things people in real life deal with. I mean, in the first book, Lucy was a single parent. In the second book, you have Jackson, as you just mentioned, who has guardianship over his sisters. Why is it important for you to include these types of characters in your books?
Well, I think from a family perspective, it's important to show families of all different sizes and shapes, guardianship, single parents, two dads, two moms. I think we don't see often enough diversity in family structure, in romance. And I also wanted these books to feel like a love letter to all sorts of different types of love, whether it be romantic love, platonic love, family love, sibling love, parental love. And so for me, it was important to show love on the full spectrum. And then I've never read a romance that is just a romance. It's always dealing with other issues like grief or confidence, growth. So for me, when you write a story, informing the characters and building the background around them that informs why they make the decisions they do, it just makes everything feel richer, I think.
Totally. And I think romance writers these days, yourself included, are so good at adding depth to these stories that, we know there's going to be a happy ending, but there's so many layers to it, and it's made reading romance so much fun. What has it been like for you now and for the last couple of years to be in this romance writing space?
It's been bananas. I this was never the career trajectory or what I anticipated for myself. I wrote my first book, Love Light Farms, as something purely for myself. It was during COVID. I just had a baby. And so I wanted to disappear into a world that felt like my own and comfortable and safe. So I wrote Love Light Farms to fulfill that need. And I didn't have a plan for like an agent or a publisher to buy it. I just self-published it myself. And then everything that sort of happened since has been just bananas. Everything spun quickly out of control from there. And I never anticipated I'd be writing romance novels full time, but here we are.
Wow. What did you do for work before that?
I was a creative director for a um, small real estate company, and I wrote a lot about bathrooms. So that was my previous portfolio work. I've always done writing in some way, but it's always been very corporate based.
What was it like to go from writing about bathrooms to writing romance?
The best. It's the first time that I've been in complete control of my career and deciding what projects I work on and, following my gut and my heart. And so it's very freeing to not write about bathroom descriptions anymore.
Do you ever get to a point in your books where you are having to describe a home in the bathroom and you're like, no, I'm just not going to go there?
You know, I did write about a bathroom in Good Spirits, and I
Oh,
started writing about the wallpaper, and I was like,
no.
old habits.
Too much like my previous life. I love that. I read in the acknowledgments that you wrote this book after you had your first son and now back to you, or was that your previous book?
No. So I wrote "And Now Back to You." This was the first book I wrote postpartum after having my son. Yes.
And what was that writing experience like compared
Oh
to your
gosh.
other previous books?
So hard. I wrote my first book when my daughter was 2, I believe. So I was like, well outside the boundaries of postpartum. Like I was feeling like myself. She was somewhat self-sufficient and not I was sleeping, which is the biggest thing when you have a baby. So writing this book, you know, I was just like, why isn't my brain working? Like, did I forget how to write? Like, is it all gone? And then combat that with losing sleep and having this new little human to care for, and just the drudgery of postpartum as a whole. I feel like I had forgotten what it feels like to create a person and then heal from that mentally, emotionally, physically, um, while like just continuing life as usual and caring for all these children who need you.
Hmm.
And so the further I moved through postpartum, it was like, oh, like this is something I need to take care of myself. And this is a thing that happens, and it's okay, like it'll come back. And the more I moved through it, the more it came back. But yeah, I joke that this book was the hardest book I've ever written for that reason. And I remember turning it into my editor and being like, it's all garbage. It's the worst.
That sounds like
Um,
the post-pregnancy, postpartum brain.
yes, it was. And like the more, and now my son, he'll turn 2 in June.
Oh,
And so like as I move more and more away, I'm like, oh, I didn't lose anything. I was just being a normal woman in postpartum.
yeah. What helped you get through it?
I think just time and patience with myself. I think continuing to dedicate time to things that were just for me. It can be hard in postpartum to take stuff for yourself, time, especially because you feel guilty that you should be giving all you have to others. But yeah, continuing to dedicate time to working on stuff that fed me and made me feel good, as opposed to just letting guilt rule my life.
Yeah. I know that we mentioned earlier you are inspired by 90s rom-coms, Nora
Mhm.
Ephron. What is your go-to comfort movie in that sort of genre?
Sleepless in Seattle, which is why I started this series with First Time Caller as like a twist on it's just a beloved movie to me. Whenever I'm homesick or feel sad, it's the one I turn on and just let myself sink into the endorphins. And I really love How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. That's
Mm,
just
that's a good
so
one.
good.
Well, and
Mhm.
Sleepless in Seattle, she lives in Baltimore, so I'm sure when that came out, that was probably really exciting.
Yes, I remember it was the first time I had watched a romance. Baltimore does not get the rom-com treatment very often. I think our biggest comparison is often like when I tell people I'm from Baltimore, they're like, "Oh, The Wire," and I'm like,
Oh,
"Yes."
that's
Also, no.
not the same thing. Not even
And
close.
so I feel like we don't get romanticized in the way New York does, or
Mm.
Chicago, or Los Angeles. And so when I watched Sleepless in Seattle and they were walking along the cobblestone streets in Fells Point, I was like, ah, Baltimore. So it felt nice to be the setting for once of something very romantic.
Yeah, I love that. What is it like to be writing about your hometown and your home city?
Oh, it's such a really rewarding experience to write about Baltimore the way I experience it, in a very nostalgic, romantic way. But then also to see the way people respond to it when I get to do events in the community and I see people from Baltimore that are like, finally, like it feels like the Baltimore we live and we know and we love. Um, I feel like I should get a little bit of tourism dollars because I've had a few people tell me that they visited the city because of books. But it's nice just to celebrate, the businesses I love, the neighborhoods I love, things I grew up enjoying, things I experience with my children now. But yeah, it's been really great.
I love that. So for people who are first timers like myself, I've never been to Baltimore. This is like probably I know I'm putting you on the spot here. What are like your must you have to see, you have to go to this area, to this neighborhood, restaurant, etc.
I'm very food driven.
Okay.
So you have to have seafood when you visit Baltimore. We're known for our crab cakes. I think Johnny's has the best crab cakes in the city. It's a very contentious competition as to who has the best crab cakes. O'Bricky's has great crab cakes, which I just realized they just opened. So I grew up going to O'Bricky's with my parents. And it's wild. They just opened up in the airport. I was at
Oh.
our airport and I was like, oh my gosh, this is my childhood crab shack. So that's Baltimore. They have a crab shack in the airport.
Love that.
And then Cafe Leon for pastries. They
Yum.
were just nominated for a James Beard, which is phenomenal.
Cool.
I go there with my kids all the time. Yes, very food driven. So it's a great food city. Eckiben was nominated for a James Beard as well, and they have really great fusion food. And then Patterson Park for wandering around. The Peabody Library, if you're a book lover, it's
Mm.
gorgeous. I wanted to get married there, but my mom said no.
Oh, no. Where did you get married?
Uh, wait, where did I get
Yeah, where
married?
did you end up getting married?
We ended up getting married on a boat dock,
Oh,
which was also beautiful.
that sounds
Um,
beautiful.
but I'm a book lover, so the library fantasy will live on in my head.
I love that. I'm a big library bookstore girl, and I know you're about to go on sort of a bit of a tour, going to different spots to meet readers. What is it like for you meeting your readers and going to these events and local bookstores?
It's still a bit unbelievable, that anyone is willing to, one, buy my books, two, talk to me about my books, three, wait in line to talk to me about my books. So it's still, I hope like I never lose this feeling of being surprised and excited about all of it. I feel like once I start having expectations, that's when I'll lose some of the magic. So I'm still very much just enjoying every bit of it.
I love that. I read or I watched an interview where you talked about writing like fan fiction in
Oh,
high
yeah.
school. And was it Gilmore Girls? That was your
Uh,
was that what part of the what was the fiction? Was it Gilmore Girls? I thought that's what I had read.
Yeah, I was talking to Haley, who runs a Gilmore Girls podcast, and
Oh.
she pulled that one out of me. But yes, I was fluent in fan fiction before I wrote original fiction.
But you know what? Fan fiction is like, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, Wicked is fan fiction. I mean, there's so much, like,
Mhm.
so many books that are, I'm trying to think of other, like, really mainstream examples, but it kind of
50
is.
Shades of Grey was Twilight
Yeah.
fan
Oh,
fiction.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't
Yeah.
know
And
that.
then there was I'm sure there, it used to be, it sort of used to be like a secret that you kept if you were an author who previously wrote fan fiction, but I feel like Ali Hazelwood blew that door right off the hinges. Um, and now more authors are like, oh yeah, like I did write fan fiction. And I feel
Yeah.
like for especially millennials who grew up in fanfiction.net, AO3, like with
Wattpad,
that as such
wasn't
a
that one of
large,
them?
yes,
Yeah.
Wattpad.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like if you're interested in reading and writing, then the chances are good that you probably participated in those communities growing up. So,
Totally, totally. And it was a way to like be creative. And if you loved something, you can just like elaborate on something that you already love. I was
correct.
um I was like 25 years late to Gilmore Girls and I just finished watching it for the first time. Like I started it, it took me a whole year to get through it. And
Well, congratulations. Welcome.
I can't believe I waited this. And then I listened to all of Lauren Graham's books and I personally though, I loved how it ended. I feel like I'm in the minority.
Did you watch The Year in the
Yeah,
Life?
yeah, and I liked it.
That's that's the controversial bit.
I know.
It's strange though, because so I watched it when I was like 16, 14 to 16.
Yeah,
Um, And that represents for me, like who I was at 16 watching that show for the first time is different than who I am as like an adult woman
yeah,
watching the show. So I think that definitely, I think for a lot of people who originally watched the show and then watched A Year in the Life, I think our perspectives probably changed a great deal between those two timelines.
yeah,
And so I try to keep that in mind with my feelings about how the show ended because 16-year-old me is not 35-year-old me,
yeah.
you know?
Totally. No, totally. It was still fun to watch and it's just like going back to cozy shows and movies. It's like one you can just like I turn it on for back. If I'm reading, it's like it's that's what's on my television.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so and now back to you is the second in the Heartstring series. You mentioned that it was supposed to be the third. So, what can you say about can you say anything about the third?
I can say a few things
Okay.
about the third. I'm working on it right now. I'm probably not as far along on it as I should be. It is just like the first two. It's another twist on a Nora Ephron classic, this one being You've Got Mail. um, which I know everybody says that. I hear that gasp so often. And I think that's why it took me so long to start this book is because everybody knows this movie, loves this movie. And so there's a lot of pressure. And then there's also the challenge of having two characters fall in love twice, They need to fall in love anonymously, and then they need to fall in love in real life. And
Yeah.
so um, it's been a lot of fun playing with these two characters. I think after you read And Now Back to You, you'll have a good idea who it's about. Um, yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for this one.
I'm trying to guess. I won't guess here, but I'm trying to guess who I had an idea who I thought it would be, but now I think it's not who I thought it was going to be. I
I'm interested.
I thought it was
I'm
going to be
intrigued.
Gianna and Mark.
No, they don't.
Okay.
They won't have
Cuz
their own book.
okay.
They like exist. And when Harry met Sally, the two best friends of Harry and Sally fall in love. And so that was my effort for Gianna and Mark to sort of mirror that secondary
Oh.
relationship.
Okay, I did that makes so much sense now. Cuz when I was reading it, I was thinking who's going to be because I just assumed there was going to be a third book when I was reading the second and I was
Mhm.
trying to like think who's going to be. But you're right. That doesn't make sense because we already know. Like no spoilers, but that wouldn't work. That
Yeah.
concept I guess wouldn't work.
Yeah,
Okay.
their relationship sort of just flows in the background.
Yeah. I love that. Is there anything else you want people to know about and now back to you as they're getting ready to read it?
I think if you enjoyed First Time Caller, if you like cozy, gentle, comforting romance that feels like a 90s rom-com, then I hope you enjoy And Now Back to You. And I think it pairs perfectly with a snowy weekend, which us East Coasters are about to hunker down for. Um, I'm not sure you get many snowy weekends where you
um,
are.
no, I mean it is supposed to rain this weekend, which is a really big deal. But I mean it's almost 80 degrees here. Well, it's
Well, if you want a snowy weekend,
come to Baltimore.
fictionally,
Yes. Yes, and I do love that book is set in Baltimore and the series is when we're used to reading about New York, Los Angeles, or just like indiscriminate, random, made-up small town. Nothing wrong with that.
Yes.
Obviously, we love our small town romances, but
Yes.
it was it's a nice change of pace for sure.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Book is out in February, and we so appreciate it, and we're excited about number 3.
Secret number 3.